Della, this is where it all begins. This is where we're going to build the dream house. It's going to be wonderful. I'm going to take you to Hollywood. I'm going to become one of the world's greatest magicians. I'm going to take care of you. This is going to be so wonderful.
Tony, I know you have big dreams, and I know you want to build me this luxurious home, and you want to take care of me, but I don't want you to overwhelm yourself.
Della, I know you're concerned, but don't be worried. I'm going to work night and day. I'm going to make every single effort I can. This house is going to be great. It will be remembered.
There is no evidence yet of a ghost or that there is an afterlife, although people of faith would probably disagree with me.
Ghosts and spirits, I believe they are both here on the earth plane.
I don't believe energy ever dies. I believe it just moves on.
There seems to be certain places throughout the world that have a supernatural phenomenon taking place.
Those that came near the home could feel the anguish of the spirits that had lived on the property for so long. The spirits mourned along with many of the citizens of Clovis on that day. The energy that surrounded the home was dense and filled with anger, sadness, and hopelessness. The spirits that lived there considered the Wolfe Manor their home, and they were devastated by the demolishment. Some of the spirits knew what had happened and struggled with what to do next. They wanted someone to blame. Other spirits were completely confused as to what happened to their home and why it was gone. They couldn't fathom that their home had been taken away from them.
But there was a time where I had an unhealthy fascination with the Wolfe Manor, to the point that all I would think about was the Wolfe Manor. and all I would think about is that building and the energy associated with that building.
I was a person that I didn't believe in ghosts and spirits and stuff like that. I mean, I'd never had an experience, and I definitely did not want to be a person to tell ghost stories.
There's a lot about Wolfe Manor that I can appreciate. In fact, I met my wife through Wolfe Manor, so that's a positive thing that came through the experience. I met a lot of great people that came in and out of that location, and because of that location got to know other folks. And so for me, it's actually been a huge impact on me. And I think no matter how you look at it, positive, negative, whatever was in there, whether you believe it was haunted, whether you believe it wasn't, whether you believe it was non-human, whether you believe it was human spirit, doesn't matter. Through that location, through what Todd put together, a lot of people learned about themselves, grew, changed, found different paths in their life. And so for that reason, it's been a catalyst for so many people, and that can be a really good thing.
Definitely something to get used to. This is my first time being here without the manor here, so definitely an interesting experience, but I can definitely feel that there is something still here, though, even though not physically, but definitely. There's just a feeling that the Wolfe Manor is still here, that it'll never go. But yeah, definitely an experience being out here with no Wolfe Manor. It's a different take.
I hope he's okay, because I know this place probably meant a lot to him, and how, yeah, it was sad, and I hope he's okay, because like me, I can't even walk down the street because it's so sad and heartbreaking.
The first time I went into the house, I was extremely nervous. I had heard all the paranormal stories. I didn't know if I wanted to get involved with that. I didn't know if I believed in that. I just wanted to focus on the history. And I just felt being inside the house, looking around, it kind of gives you an idea of how things were, and it helps you on historical research.
I spent, I don't know, maybe 6-8 years working with Todd and the Wolfe crew, and getting this place out in the open, and getting it known.
Wolfe Manor was a haunted house. I mean, truly. Even before the Scream If You Can, even before that. I mean, we met people and talked to people who worked there back in the 70s. You know, we interviewed people, and they all said the same thing. I mean, there were strange things that were going on there then.
So this was Martinez Paranormal Group's venue. This is where we started. This was the birthplace of our group. Totally coming in as a skeptic, thinking, there's something psychological going on here, but after even the first time we've been there was something different, something changed in me, and we continue to come back. We came back several more times, and we caught so much good evidence here at the Wolfe Manor.
The Wolfe Manor to this day is one of the most haunted places I've been, and yet one of the most disturbing places I've ever been. And that's over almost 100 locations I've done. The Wolfe Manor is definitely on my top 3 list.
Wolfe Manor should still be living. And not just a lot like this, empty lot full of small bricks and dirt and memories. And
As many now know, the Wolfe Manor is gone. But just 5 days before the demolition, Todd invited a film crew to document what will be his final tour of the mansion. It was his final chance to tell the story of this haunted place and reveal what was hidden behind the layers of asbestos sheetrock that were removed just days prior. It was his chance to say goodbye to the mansion that gave him an identity and a connection to the past. Like many, he was curious about what was hidden inside the walls.
Yep. Oh. Great find. This is cool.
But before we get to that, Let's go back to the beginning of the story, before Todd Wolfe, before the hauntings. There was an Italian man with a dream of building a beautiful home for his family.
Clovis town itself was just a small little town. It wasn't actually a city at that time. It was just like a railroad depot. It was 1912, I believe, when it actually became an incorporated city. Everything was farms. And then you have these huge barns, and you have the little windmills, and you have tractors, and you have farm equipment. And if you look at it now, it's kind of hard to imagine how it could have been. But back in the day, they had all of the outbuildings. The barns were huge, and they kept the feed for the animals, and they had irrigation equipment and farm equipment. So it was quite a big setup for that time. Tony Andreotti was the son of first-generation Italian immigrants, Pellegrino Andreotti and Filomeno Costello. They came around 1888. They wanted the American dream of having a home, having a good life, and providing for their children, which they did fairly well for a short time. In 1901, Pellegrino passes away, leaving Filomena by herself with two small children and no way to care for them. And she did not know how to read or write, and you can imagine she was pretty scared at the time. She eventually meets and marries Frank Fierro, who is a very successful vineyardist in the area. And for some reason, even though she couldn't read or write, she became involved with selling of properties. And I have found many, many documents where she has bought and sold properties in the area. And in 1916, I found a document that she purchased property for Tony, her son Tony, and that is the property that the house was on. So it was actually his mother that purchased the home. I also found that the next year in 1917, she purchased an adjoining lot for her son-in-law, Gus Spiropoulos, and that home is still standing. It's still just as beautiful as the manor had been. And it was just she entitled her kids, or enabled her kids to have that American dream. In 1916, I found in the Fresno directory that Tony, even though he was a very successful farmer in his own right, had always been, had a dream, a vision of being a magician and being famous. And in 1916, he was a limousine chauffeur for the Hotel Fresno downtown. And I just imagined him driving all the famous people around town and himself wanting to be the one to be driven in a chauffeur and being famous. And it was about that time that he changed his name from Andreotti to Andrews. And we don't know for sure why he did this, except for the fact that he might have felt that if he had more of an American name, he would have been able to achieve his stardom a lot easier. I don't know how Tony met Della Davidson. She was a little younger than he was, so I don't know if they met in school or they just met somewhere in town. But they ended up falling in love and marrying. And I can't find any records on them except in the 1920 census. They have their one-year-old son, Frederick Tony, and they are living on the property where the manor is to be built. They are living in the same household as his mother and stepfather, Filomena and Frank. And I know it is the same property because the neighbors are Gus Spiropoulos and the McGarry family, which are at the same properties they were also. So I know that was the property back in 1920 that they had been living on before the manor. And then jumping to 1922, Filomena takes out a $20,000 gold coin loan from the Bank of Italy for that specific property. So whether she needed to help Tony with financing the house or whether she was the main financial backer of the home, the actual home mortgage was in her name only. Tony built this magnificent home. They were hoping to find that it was actually a Sears kit home. I have never found the proof that's needed to say that. There were so many restrictions to be a Sears kit home. But I did find out that Della's father, Frank Davidson, was a house carpenter, and in my research, most of the Sears kit homes were built in the Ohio area, and Della's family came from Ohio. So it could be possible that Frank Davidson had built some Sears kit homes for people, and when it was time for Della and Tony to build their home, he helped them design it in the same manner. You know, Della could have been looking at a Sears catalog and choosing the best home that she felt she wanted for herself, which was the Magnolia model, and maybe her dad helped her design it, and they put it together. If you look at the history of the Sears kit, they have markings everywhere. You would have to be able to find certain numbers and markings in rafters in different areas of the house. The bathtubs would have a Sears logo at the very base of them, or underneath the vanity, the cabinets, the faucets. They would have a logo of Sears, and you would know that they would be a Sears kit home. And we just didn't find that. And when I talked to some of the researchers that did a lot of researching on the Sears kit homes, there could be certain changes to the home, but as far as the outside structure, that would not change at all. And the Magnolia was more of a colonial style home, whereas the Andreotti house was more of a craftsman style house. So there's just too many differences on the outside for it to be a Sears kit home. Around the same time the house was built, in the end of 1922, I believe it was probably finished in actually early 1923, I found some documents where Philomena, Tony's mother, is also selling a 6-room home. No address listed at the time, but it showed that it was 1.5 miles south of Clovis. So I'm thinking that they might have been selling the home that they lived in while the manor was being built. So Tony moves into the house. He's having a great time. Shortly after, 3 months after, April of 1923, his mother dies. And I can just imagine he's devastated. And then if you remember, it was his mother that took out the loan for the home. So in June of that same year, I find his stepfather Frank has deeded him the house and the mortgage from his mother's estate. And then, unfortunately, in October of the same year, Frank dies. Frank Fierro dies. So now Tony has the home, he's sole owner of the home, but if he needs any financial help, which he's finding that he does, he has nobody to go to. His mother's gone, his stepfather's gone. So from that time on, I think it was a struggle for them to keep the house, and it's such a shame in such a short time. They never really got to enjoy it fully before they had to work so hard just to maintain what they had. So by June of 1927, foreclosure is in full action. So they are going to be losing their home. They actually make a deal with the Bank of Italy that is as far behind as they were on their mortgage. They still loaned them $2,000 to have money to bring in all of their crops that they had started. And the hopes in that from the bank and from the Andrews family was to make enough profit from all of their crops to be able to catch up on their mortgage. And unfortunately, that didn't happen either. So on July 1st of 1927, the house went up on public auction downtown on the courthouse steps, and it was sold for just under $25,000 for this beautiful home, 80 acres, 8,000 square foot home. And it went for just under $25,000. And the winning bid went to a Paul Mesesian, and Paul Mesesian was very popular in fruit packing houses in the area, and he owned a lot of property. He used the property for fruit packing, and to our knowledge, and I have talked to one of his descendants, nobody had ever occupied the house at that time. But as for Tony, him and his wife made a contract with another neighbor. Her name was Mary Nelson. And she gave them a deal that if he farmed and took care of her property and took care of the crops and turned them into Sun-Maid, that they could live on the property in a small house. And this went on from 1928 into 1929. And then in November of 1929, Tony passes away at the age of 36. And his death certificate lists it as his cause of death is cirrhosis of the liver. So many people assume, which could be true, that he drank himself to death with the sadness that went on in his life. I wasn't sure about that. It could have happened, but I know from hearing things from the family that he was just a family man too, a caring man, and I know he was broken because losing the house. So I went to one of his nieces and I asked her this. I asked her the story. I said, "Do you think he drank himself to death?" And this is Angelina, and she was in her late 80s, and she looked at me and she said, "We're Italians. We all drink a lot." And she says, he didn't drink himself to death. She said, he died of a broken heart. And for me, with the connection I've had now with the home and the stories I've heard from the family and the documents I found, to me that's how I will say he died. He died of a broken heart. He was a broken man. He had such hopes and such dreams to have this grand, big life, and he never got it. He never reached it. Sometime in the mid-1930s, it became Hazelwood Convalescent Hospital, and it was that for 5 or 6 years. Shortly after that, I find a phone book with the Clovis Sanitarium, and it was Mr. and Mrs. Brashear's owners saying they owned it since 1942. Back in the time when Clovis was still really young, they did have a Clovis Sanitarium in town on Pulaski. There was a Dr. McMurtry, and he opened up a small place right in town and delivered babies. He was the doctor. He helped everybody there. Later on, when the Wolfe Manor, which was at that time the Andrews house, Tony Andrews' house, when it turned into a sanitarium, they called it the Clovis Avenue Sanitarium to distinguish between the two. She owned it, I know, up until 1978. She had sold it at one time, and I'm not sure if it's from the Riley nursing home or where. Things are a little sketchy, but at one point they were holding the loan on it, and the people foreclosed on it, so it reverted back to the Brashears. And then it was Clovis Nursing Home, and it was owned through the Riley Corporation, and at that time the president of the Riley Corporation was Carl Lamoureux. Well, then one of the last owners of the home was actually Carl Lamoureux. Whether he was connected with Riley or because he knew it from the Riley homes and he bought it personally, it's sketchy, we don't know. Carl ends up dying in the home in 1985. He had had an aneurysm and fell over his desk, and his son had found him. After that, it's sketchy again. I don't know who ran it. I know it lost its accreditation, and by 1992 it was forced to close. And Todd buys it in 1997. I believe from 92 to 97 it was empty. It was unoccupied.
The work of scientists alone cannot eliminate the deadly bacteria that cause tuberculosis. It takes community action.
During the mansion's run as a sanitarium, the tuberculosis epidemic was in full swing. This illness that infected the lungs of millions of men, women, and children around the world is caused by a bacteria that attacks the lungs and causes symptoms such as chills, loss of appetite, fatigue, and coughing up blood. In the 1920s, the mortality rate from this disease forced the medical community to devise a means to house the many patients that needed extra care to survive. Sanitariums were set up as convalescent homes for the TB sufferers. While a cure was on the horizon, for many, it did not come soon enough. Thousands would die in sanitariums, including the one on Clovis Avenue.
When I was looking years ago at around 1997, I wanted to build a Halloween attraction in the Clovis area. And this property I ran across was absolutely perfect. This beautiful mansion was in the front and this hospital wing was in the back. So I went forward and talked to the owners of the property to be able to rent it to build the Scream If You Can Halloween attraction. The deal went through. I rented it the first year, followed by the next year I got to purchase the entire property, where 8 years the Halloween attraction ran, and it was an incredible event. I'm not from Clovis. I didn't know the history of that building at all. All I know, it was a mansion and a hospital wing in the back. That's all I knew of the property. So when I opened up the Halloween attraction, Scream If You Can, I decided to do a large fundraising event with one of the schools in town, which would be Clovis East. We had the students from the school come and be our actors. I would do a donation back to the school. So it was amazing. The kids had a lot of fun. They learned to scare people. They learned a good work ethic. And so they became kind of famous at school, which I learned later that when the attraction got closed, why the kids were so upset, because at that time they were known to be able to work at Scream If You Can and be behind the scenes. And the best thing was the reactions from people that came to the event. I didn't realize that people had followed me for the 8 years that it was there. People would come up to me and say, Todd, every year we come here to see what you build, and we try to remember when we leave, and we go home for Halloween and we try to duplicate some of the things that you do. You know, and I was really surprised. I didn't know that. I just thought people came through, had a great time, and, you know, left. I got a lot of people saying that. They said every year we keep seeing you get better and better and better. More theatrical, more animatronics, spending a lot more money on my props. And so entertaining the public was probably the best part of Scream If You Can for me. It wasn't about the amount of money that was being made. A lot of people think it was, but it really wasn't. It was all about entertaining the public, which I could not wait to open up the first night and watch the people come outside and see their reaction. Going up to them, asking them, did you have a good time? And you know, they would just all talk and interrupt each other, telling me about every scare and things that they could remember. And so that was the biggest joy for me, entertaining the public and making sure they liked what I created.
Now that we're inside the house, this is the main entryway to the manor. The asbestos people were here last week. They went through and stripped the walls of sheetrock, which were embedded with asbestos. So the asbestos has to be removed before the house can start the demolition process. So this is the Wolfe Manor stripped down. No one has ever seen this. It's new to me. I remember when the walls were burgundy and all decorated and beautiful. Now the house is basically stripped down, and you can see the original wallpaper when it was a sanitarium. Some of the doorways were opened, and we also have some hidden passages that I have never known about until I got to come in here after the asbestos people left a few days ago. So right now we're in the main entryway. Everything is stripped down. We see wires that we didn't know were here. The doorways are larger than what we thought they were. So you guys get to see all behind the scenes of pretty much what the Wolfe Manor used to look like before they refurbished it into a sanitarium. So the first room we're going to go into is the formal dining room. I have always had all the windows shut and boarded up for safety and mainly security, so people couldn't break in. But so now it's amazing having all this light come in. So I'm sure the spirits are happy that the lights are on again and it's nice and bright. But hopefully we're going to be removing the kitchen or the cabinetry here. All the hardwood floors now are exposed, so we can see the original hardwood floors and the funky wallpaper. So it's pretty amazing seeing some of this stuff. It's kind of sad, actually, but a lot of memories. I just hope the spirits here are going to find their way to wherever they're going to be going, and they're peaceful and they're happy, and but I'm not for sure. So Right in here, we're going to go into the kitchen. The plastic is still up from the asbestos people, so the whole house had to be sealed. They didn't do a lot of work in here at all, but this is the original kitchen to the manor. We always wanted to make this into a kitchen for a restaurant in the Wolfe Manor, but none of that is happening now, so this is your last look to see this old beautiful kitchen. So let's go into the main hallway. And the exciting part for me, again, is seeing all these beautiful hardwood floors. These were all oak and probably really shiny back in the day. So this is the first time I've ever seen them. So it's hard for me not to wish that these were all shiny and beautiful and to where everybody could come back in here and explore. But this is our secret right now. This had a wall, and so this is a secret passageway, and we believe, because this family was very, very wealthy, the Andrade family, that they had servants' quarters that were in the back right next to the basement. Well, now we realize that this is the servants' staircase. So they probably weren't eligible to go up the main staircase, just in case there were guests. So they had a servants' staircase. So that's this right here. So this is an amazing find. So this goes all the way up to the second floor. So it's kind of exciting.
In terms of paranormal activity, there's a lot of different theories out there, and much of what I've experienced has led me to believe that some people, when they pass away, do leave their energy behind, and it sticks around kind of in coexistence with our earthly plane, and that's the interaction we have with ghosts, and what I believe paranormal investigators in general are working with, trying to get information from and talk to.
When you pass away from this body that you're in now, that soul or that energy, I don't believe energy ever dies. I believe it just moves on. It goes to something else. And I believe that when we run into ghosts a lot of times, spirits, it's that energy that has not been placed yet or has not moved on.
Webster's dictionary explains or defines paranormal as anything that is unexplained or can't be explained by any logical reason. And I think that there's a lot of things in our universe, on Earth, that are definitely unexplained.
Well, I think the paranormal exists because of various factors, mainly because of the history associated with buildings, the turmoil, the death, the energy associated with the living in a building at that particular time.
So I think when we go and we investigate places, what we're really picking up is this energy, this lost energy. And that energy can be brought forth by a passion for something, now including the person that passed as well, if he has a passion for being a teacher or she was a senator or whatever. Things that we really like to do, an actor or something like that. This passion increases that energy.
Ghosts are people that have passed away, that are stuck here, that haven't crossed over yet. I believe that there are spirits. Spirits are like our grandmother who's passed away and that comes and visits us to let us know that she's okay, that type of a thing. So that's what I believe in.
I believe they're the energy that people call a soul. And I do believe that they can pass on and go to heaven and then come back down and actually look and watch over someone like a guardian angel. Or sometimes they can be confused and not understand and need some help in passing on because they're afraid of the consequences when they go to that light.
I think that the paranormal and people that investigate the paranormal, if you want to do it, get ready, because it's not the most exciting thing in the world. But when you do get something that's not, that you can't explain, it is very exciting. And anybody that's in it knows it takes hours, days, months, years to actually find something that's worthy of this excitement.
I think that there's something to do with the energy of the people that have been going into that building for years and years and years and trying to contact the dead. Along with when it was a tourist attraction that Todd Wolfe ran, I think that this place was almost, the energy fed off of that. It fed off of other energy, specifically the energy of the living. And I think that throughout the conception of that building, that there has been something there that has just gained momentum throughout the entire time the Wolfe Manor stood.
I can still see the manifestations, you know, the moving of objects, the hearing the recorded voices when there's nobody else in the room but me, and the pictures, and you know, so yeah, I definitely believe. I believe the Wolfe Manor was haunted.
I believe Wolfe Manor was haunted mostly because you have, number one, a family that had a home that they loved and they lost it tragically through the Depression, and two, became a sort of hospital and I believe it was a sanatorium. And so when you have a place where there's ill people sick, and then later a convalescent home, people dying, sometimes when those people die, they get confused in that death process and get stuck behind. And I think a lot of the activity people experience at Wolfe Manor is because of those things, because of either the convalescent home where people passed away and don't understand that they are dead, or because people even before that maybe are just confused or have stuff left unfinished, and it was a place that they recognized, so they stayed there.
I believe that Wolfe Manor was the most haunted house that I ever spent an entire night in. And believe me, I've spent a lot of time in a lot of haunted houses. It was the most. The number of spirits that were there, the reactions that you get to questions, the different phenomena that happen, and not just from the psychic view, where anybody can say, I'm a psychic and I know that this is George and I know this is Mary. When you can actually ask questions and get physical tapping evidence, or you can pick up on things like that, or get them in video and see mists or see little dark figures or see, you know, things like that, then, you know, that's proof to someone. But in my belief, I believe that is the most haunted house I've ever been in.
I was with a team at the house while they were videotaping. We were up in what we call George's room, and I was standing in the middle of the room and I was asking my normal questions, you know, who's here, what's your name, that type of a thing. And something actually came up and pushed my back and actually made me trip and kind of almost fall down. It was such a hard shove. That was incredible to have something actually touch me that hard on my back.
I was up in the heart attack room, and they had the gurney up there at the time. And so I had Brandon and a couple of other investigators strap me down onto the gurney, and legs strapped, arms strapped, and I was just laying there flat. And I was up there for about 20 minutes and didn't really have much going on, and then I kind of started feeling a little something weird, kind of just a presence in the room with me. And I kind of reached out to a little bit, didn't hear much of anything, and then it started getting a little bit more overwhelming to the point where I was like, I don't really feel comfortable being up here alone at the time with this. And so I started undoing the straps, and I did have enough wiggle room to get my arm out. I told them to leave me that much, and to get my arm out, started undoing the straps, and I undid the leg straps, and as I was getting off the gurney, you can hear a man. I was speaking, I was saying something, you know, about kind of narrating what was going on for the audio, and you can hear an old man underneath my voice say, "Get out," and I stopped talking, and you can still hear the man finish his sentence over me, and I'm the only one in the building. And so that was definitely an interesting moment for me.
The first time I visited Wolfe Manor, I was there with a team that was prepping for the TV show to come in, and when we were investigating that night, the first thing that happened is walking upstairs with one of the mediums on the team. She, what I believe, was taken over by a spirit, because it felt like when we were at the top of the staircase, after the front entryway you walk in, we went up the stairs, and at the top of the staircase I felt a rush of wind by me, which I thought was odd. I turned around and immediately the medium dropped to the ground and she was completely out. We had to carry her out of the location and got her in the car, drove her away from the property about 5 miles, 10 miles before she came back. And so at that point I was still skeptical whether or not the medium was being honest, but the fact that I had a personal experience at the same time that she did, I thought maybe there was something to this. And I will tell you that out of all the places I've been, I've never never captured more activity at any single location than at Wolfe Manor.
I was in one of the hospital rooms in the back, and all the windows are sealed up because of the Halloween attraction. We had to keep the noise in, so we had all the windows with insulation and things like that. And I was in this room, and it was like someone was standing behind me and blew air right on the back of my neck. I turn around and look, and obviously there was no one there. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to be a person to tell ghost stories, and I didn't really know what it was.
I was there, and I think it was 2009 at the Wolfe Manor with Martinez Paranormal Group, Scott Grinwald, Todd Wolfe, filming for a Halloween special. I was upstairs on the second floor on a room. If you were to walk up the staircase, it would be the first room on your left. I walked in to see what seemed like, the silhouette, almost the outline of a short, kind of squat man, bald, with a few hairs still on his head, looking directly at me from inside that room. And later on, I was telling Jesus and George about it, and George actually experienced the same thing at a different time in that exact area on that second floor.
We'd gone upstairs and I'd walked in, I believe it was the sun porch. I had a tremendous sadness. I didn't want to just cry, I wanted to sob. It was tremendous. I had a heaviness in my chest. I felt nauseous, and I just didn't know what to feel. It was nothing like I'd ever felt before. And as soon as I walked out of that room, I was completely normal.
So a couple of my members of ours were on the second floor of the Wolfe Manor. We were in the room called the Black Room at the time, so there used to be an old-fashioned gurney. Our other group, we split up in two groups. The other part of the group was in the basement, so it wouldn't contaminate any noise that were made. So while we were up there, we were doing some EVP questions, just asking questions if anybody was there. At one point, one of our investigators, Jesus, calls me over the mic and asks if we were moving around, because I think they were hearing footsteps on the first floor. As soon as his transmission had ended and I was about ready to reply, what we heard was like a giggle from like a little girl, and it was really loud and it was really close. And what was fascinating about it was that I wasn't the only one that heard it. Someone else had heard it as well, so that was even more validating to hear an actual voice in real life, in vivo. And then we went back and replayed the recording. It was on there as well.
One of the staff members was going to work in the hospital wing, and this was her story. She came in late and she said, "Todd, I want to work tonight." And I said, "Laura, there's no more positions available." She goes, "Well, can I volunteer somewhere?" And I said, "If you want to, we can find a little hiding place for you, and you can kind of just come out of the dark and kind of frighten people." She said, "Okay." So we put her in this closet area in the main part of the hospital wing, and she was just dressed in black, and people would come out or walk by, and she'd kind of come out and catch them off guard. She was in there probably maybe 20, 25 minutes. She came out the front where I was at, looked scared. I remember her mouth being dry and she was having a hard time talking, and I pulled her away from the guests that were in line. I said, "What's going on?" She said, "Mr. Wolfe," she said, "I can't work in there." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Something put their hands on my shoulders and pulled me back into that closet." And I said, "Laura, come on." And she was panting, she was nervous, her mouth was dry, and she worked outside the rest of the season, and from there on, she never worked inside the house. So that was a moment where I'm like, maybe there is something in there. And again, the door was opening in my head of possibilities, that it wasn't just happening to me, it's now happening to other people.
Up in Mary's, what was later described as Mary's room, and I had brought a rose and I laid it on the pillow on the bed, and to my knowledge I was the first one to do that, and then I think people kept doing it after that. So I was in there, I was by myself, and there was a couple people downstairs, I think across the hall, but I started my recorder and I just simply asked, "Mary, are you here?" And I got a yes, a qualified yes on the recorder.
The thing, I'm getting chills now thinking about it.
Honestly, I got goosebumps thinking about it. There was a room across from Mary's room. Could see it as a large bedroom, maybe like a dorm bedroom or something, where you could put maybe 5 or 6 beds in there. I felt like there was a lot of invisible, curious people around me, like maybe 6, 7, 8, I don't know. And they were coming in closer. This was a live video show. And when the camera would come in closer, I could feel the presence backing away. And when the camera would back away, I could feel the presence coming around me more. And that's what really gives me goosebumps to this day.
You know, the second experience I had was when I was in the heart attack room, what's known as the heart attack room, with Michael Rudy, an APRA investigator. We were in the room by ourselves. Michael was on the gurney. I was sitting on one of the chairs. We were both listening to live audio monitoring, doing an EVP session. I heard a voice say, "Open the door now." And Michael heard what he said sounded like a room full of people laughing. And in that exact room at that time, there was this strange phenomenon where there would be a presence, felt like a presence walking into the room. There would be a smell associated with it. And the only way I can, you know, really explain this smell was what you think an old folks' home would smell like.
I always felt a presence with me. Somebody was always with me. I knew that, and I would talk to them and greet them, and I would just show respect for them. But in all those times, I never felt evil. I never felt anything bad. I just felt a presence.
We were in the house, and I was in a room we call Mary's room, very famous room. And we were standing on the south wall and doing something to the wall, moving some things around. And out of my peripheral vision, and because Mary had 2 doors, one was an emergency exit door, and then one was her original door. And out of that, I could see out of my peripheral vision a full silhouette person. I could see the legs, the shoulders, you know, went all the way around the head. I could see the entire thing, and it was just a black figure. And a lot of times when people say they see black figures, it's kind of like a blob, like there's not really a lot of details. This had every detail of an outline of a body. And at that split second, I use the word rushed, it just rushed right up to me, and it was gone. I screamed, and I knew my buddy next to me had to have seen it. And he's like, "Todd, what happened? What happened?" And I said, "Didn't you see that?" You know, he had no clue what I was even talking about.
If you remember from Ghost Adventures, Zach, Aaron, and Nick and I, when we first came in the house, we ended up right back here during the first part of the episode, and all 3 of us heard like a girl laughing. It was really cool, and I remember we all got chicken skin on our arms. And so if you've seen that episode, you'll remember this is where that happened, right here. And that's when their little meters started going a little crazy and stuff. So that was a lot of fun with those guys. So yeah, they took all the sheetrock off, so you can see what that looks like. And pretty much now we will go let's go in the family room. So you can see the opening here in the family room was much larger. We realized there's a railing up here that used to hold the, they were pocket doors. So they probably had big, beautiful wooden, dark wood stained pocket doors that would slide in the wall, and that would open this entire opening up for the family when they had large parties probably. But for the hospital, they blocked it all off and made a smaller door. So I think it had to be fireproof. That's why this is all here. So this room, there's also another secret that was revealed to me the other day when I got in here for the first time. And I'll show you that in a minute. But right now what we're trying to do is salvage the fireplace. One of my employees has already taken off the mantle. The cherubs, if you guys remember, there was beautiful brown cherubs holding up the mantle. We have removed all of that. We're also taking down the tile. So all of this will probably be put on eBay because everyone wants a piece of the Wolfe Manor. So things like that we are taking out, and so we've been working on that for the last 2 days. What else? Again, we see the funky wallpaper. A lot of the windows now are uncovered. They've been blocked for years. Oh, come over here. Behind the mantle, this is amazing. I haven't really read all of it yet, but behind the mantle, things fell down. And so we found a bunch of old treasures. And one is, here's one of the patients. Her name is Betty. This is from 1990. This is her old little photo. And then there's a lot of newspaper clippings. And from what I understand, this was from, John told me where it was printed. I don't know where it's at, but anyway, he said it was from the 50s. There's a date on here somewhere, but I don't know where it's at. So anyway, here's just old playing cards. You know, just knowing that all the patients from the Wolfe Manor, the Clovis Sanitarium, pictures. It's pretty neat. Let's go upstairs. And again, the railing's been taken down, the sheetrock was taken down, so this is the original plaster. So the original plaster probably had a lot of damage to it. So an easy way and an inexpensive way is to just go ahead and sheetrock over plaster. And that's what they did in the house, and that is what had the asbestos in it. So if you remember when we were downstairs, the staircase, so this is the staircase. It's a little bit smaller, but because they built these walls. So it's kind of a neat find. So again, what else they've done is they've taken a lot of the flooring out. Wish I had a hammer. We could open something up. Let me get a hammer.
The Wolfe Manor live shows really started kicking everything off. How that got started was Scott Grinwald called me up one day, and we were doing the private ghost tours because the Halloween house, the Scream If You Can attraction, got closed down by the city. Some neighbors complained and said there was too many people, and so we stopped the production of that after 8 years. We then started doing private ghost tours. And I remember this guy called me up with this grovelly voice, "Hello, blah, 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 blah." And I'm like, yeah, you know, it sounded like a character on the phone. And he says, "You know, I've never been into this ghost hunting thing, but gosh darn it, I'd sure like to come and check it out." And I'm like, "Sure." He said, "Oh, I don't have anybody to come with, it's just myself." And I said, "You know what, sir, if you show up, we'll squeeze you in with another group of people."
When I first heard about Wolfe Manor, it was like the biggest, most haunted, coolest place on the West Coast. Everybody wanted to go there. Todd had done tours, and in doing so with his Halloween attraction, things start happening to the guests there and the workers and stuff. And it was deemed a haunted location. Nothing fake about this. This was a haunted house attraction that became incredibly understandable as one of the most hugest haunted locations on the West Coast. We decided to take it a little bit farther. Now, I was involved with something called Haunted Wolfe Manor Live. A few of us thought, you know, let's try this. And nowadays, everybody knows that you have a cell phone, you can broadcast from it, it's very simple to do. But back in the day, it wasn't simple to do. It took hours to set up cords and cameras and get the Wi-Fi's and special equipment that we had created for this project. And Todd on it as a great producer-director. Okay, Terry and Jennifer and myself trying to figure out how to make this work. We had Wi-Fi, cards, okay, hooked to laptops, big heavy laptops strapped on people's backs with cameras on. It was so odd for some of these companies that would broadcast stuff for the Oscars or whatever. They're going, how are they doing this with no electricity or whatever? there were actually guys that were rolling tripods, and I could show you guys the equipment. I still have it. I can't throw it away. I would pull out stuff, and around a couple hours later, Terry would roll in, and Terry he'd have his clipboard. We're going to roll it this way, this way, this way. We're going to get a shot from here, this way, this way. And then if Terry's there, then the engineers, the producers would come rolling in. There's Brandon Smeltzer and Hesse and the great Lipinski and then Todd, always making sure that all of our I's were dotted and our T's were crossed to make sure that everything ran smooth. That was Todd's thing. And by the time it started getting dark out at night, we've got everything in place. We're setting up bells, we're saying yelling quiet on the set. It's an actual set, and then boom, we go live to Todd standing out in front of his house.
I'm Todd Wolfe. I'm the owner of the property, and I'm going to be filming building the Wolfe Manor Hotel. That's going to be starting in a few months, I hope.
And then I would go down there and be on different shows and come down there and help, and we'd organize stuff, and things started to progress. The equipment got nicer and nicer, and Scott had more and more fun putting this equipment together and seeing how this could work. And then I paid for a cable to come into the house, and then we could do live, and it was amazing. Started getting a bigger and bigger and bigger audience, and so we had fun. We then had to narrow it down to Scott, Terry, and I, so we started doing live shows every week, kind of. We'd go down there and all show up and have a plan and where we were going to investigate in the house. And it got really famous. More and more people were watching.
And there is no making a mistake. You can't. It's live. You can't say, okay, take two. Let's Todd, can you start from the top again? But luckily, Todd, being experienced as he is, he would nail it every time. Hi, I'm Todd Wolfe, and this is my house, and prepare to be afraid or whatever. And the whole time we were seeing Jennifer running through the house, doing her thing, and Terry doing the house. There is a crew of guys dragging cords, people holding cords off the ground, because to the viewer, the viewer, it had to give the impression it was just the viewer and the person in the house. And we found out the more people we got involved with it, the more energy was there. And I think that at the end of the night, when we're rolling up cords and we're locking up the house and we're drinking tons of water, and we're saying goodbye to our guests, that's when it becomes surreal, because we're like, we nailed another one. It took us 18 hours to give these people 90 minutes of show, and guess what? I'll see you guys all next Saturday, because we're doing it all over again.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Scott Grunwald. We're talking to you live from the Wolfe Manor.
It's kind of creepy and dark. No? All right.
I prefer with no light myself.
I hate the basement. I hate the basement.
With all the lights, though.
At 427 miles away. Why don't we do this?
I don't know, I just walked through here and there's something totally funky. I don't know if it's coming from the basement. Maybe that's why we're having technical difficulties. I don't know.
Come on. Get it. Go that way. Go that way. Go that way. I can't get the door open. Dude.
No, Brandon? Flashlight.
You hear that?
Yeah. Is there anybody in here with us? Did you touch Sean?
And he got so freaked out, he stayed in here by himself. He was trying to fall asleep.
And he was standing to my left right here, and we're looking down, and all of a sudden a nail flies towards me to my right diagonal corner.
Just going to drag it. Go into the central hub of the house, kind of work our way out from there. We're just going to see what we feel, right?
Is that my imagination? What is that? On the left? Yeah. It's like it's a little... Hey, can you shoot that? There's a door. Down at the bottom of the railing. Is there something right there? Hello?
Here we got digital camera, we've got video going, we have digital recorders, temperature gauge. I think we've got everything we need for paranormal investigation. Let's do it.
I worked at Wolfe Manor as a tour guide, and then I was also involved with the beginning of the first season of the Haunted Wolfe Manor Live. It was one of the best times of my life. I had such a great time there, giving tours and taking people in and experiencing so many paranormal things with the people that were going through. That was amazing.
We used to run static cameras before the show, and it'd be on our website. We had like four different cameras that you could tune into an hour ahead of time. And me and Scott Grunwald were running cords on the second floor, and I didn't know he had gone downstairs to check the internet signal, and something just tapped me on my shoulder, and I turned around and I was like, "Hey Scott, what's up?" And nothing was there, and it wasn't really scary, it was more like surreal. It's like, wow, did that just happen? That, and I was lightly shoved just above the staircase. That's probably my two moments that I will never forget about as far as what I've experienced there at Wolfe Manor.
On my first tour that I took at Wolfe Manor, they took us up in this room. It was called the heart attack room. And sure, when you walk in there and it's really heavy and it's really a strange room. All the other rooms are spooky in their own way, but the heart attack room had its own thing. It was almost like it was not part of the house. It was a house within a house. It was a set within a set. It was its own thing. And this tour guide told me that the light ball from the bed would fall off on occasion. So, being who I am, and there's got to be a reason for this. There's a string hooked to it, I mean, I'm really come on. And I'm checking it out, and it actually has these 3 screws that screw this ball onto a base of it, and it's on there pretty snug. You really got to, to make it fall off. And I'm like, okay, cool story. When I became a tour guide there, I remember going up there one night with the tour, and I followed the same. We followed the same thing, the same story. And I brought these people in there. I said, "You may feel weird in here," and everybody does. I mean, I've seen people throw up in this room, and I remember saying, "Well, sometimes it's been said that this," and then before I can even finish my sentence. The light bulb falls off and bounces on the ground. Okay, I'm the first one out. I mean, I'm pushing tour guests out of the way, and I'm out the door like, oh my God, because it happened. I mean, I've been telling the story for a while, and it actually happened. Now, we've had numerous guests after this following this, and this light ball on the wall would come off. Now, granted, there's a dozen of these in the house or more, but this particular one would pop off. It would just fall off on the ground. We would be downstairs sometimes, and we'd hear boom, 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 boom.
That's right in here. That's the globe. That's the globe.
Oh, yeah.
Told you.
It's what?
Come on.
Little dust.
Yes, it's right there.
This came off that
It came off from way over there.
Yes, I
It did it. This is the first time in about a month.
Oh my God.
That is so cool.
I know.
Okay, so you guys can see this. It came off that
Off that light right
that
there.
light, and it's over here. Now we tried to recreate that. We tried to recreate it, just think it just drops off the wall or something.
Right.
And every time we did it, it lands just flat on the ramp. I got the creeps right now.
I know.
It became a thing now where it was like a hello to us. We know you're here. So what caused that to fall out the wall? It surely wasn't the earth moving. It wasn't bees in the wall. It wasn't people jumping around on the floor or walking up and down the stairs. This thing, for some reason, would just come right off the wall.
I mean, it wasn't me. I heard a cat noise.
I don't know.
Kitty. Going back in over here.
There it is. There it went. That's the globe.
Oh no.
Right there.
There it is.
Right there.
It's still rolling. It's still rolling.
That's it,
Big
dude.
globe for us.
Told you.
We would have meetings ahead of time and think, what can we do? How can we push the boundaries? And one was, let's put one of us in a gurney upstairs in this room we call the heart attack room, and we'll tie them down in a gurney that was from the house, and we'll leave them alone in the house alone. And whoever was going to do that was going to be in the room by themselves, and the other two were going to go outside. The spirits were in there watching. We're doing these things. Were we enticing them, antagonizing them? Were we making them watch us going, wow, that's what happened to me? That's what my thought process was. I didn't want to ever antagonize. I wanted them to maybe go, that's what happened to me. I was on a gurney, or maybe that was a way that we could communicate with them. In that case, when we did that episode, there was a globe that was on the wall for the light fixtures. That fell off. Scott and Terry were all the way on the other side of the property, so they were quite a ways away. They heard me screaming and came upstairs, and got me out of there. So we pushed it, and some people got mad at us. Some people said we were doing too much, and most of the audience really liked it.
You were a patient in here. Come on, George! Come on! Oh my God! George! Terry! I can't talk to the radio. Terry! Scott!
We never jumped out and scared each other. We didn't do that on the Wolfe Manor Live. It was scary enough. We thought it'd be funny if I got in the crawl space, and when Terry walked by and we said the word Rose, that was me. Terry would be really close to me, and I could jump out and scare him. Well, it came. They're shooting. We're roaming through the house. Terry walks in the shot. Brandon Smelter says, "Rose, are you here?" And I went to jump out to scare Terry, and something grabbed my ankles and pulled me back in. Okay. I freak out. Now, seasoned paranormal investigators get scared to death. I come out of the crawl space, which is about 5 feet off the ground, hit my head, and ended up pretty injured on that. Was scared to death, was never coming back.
What is your name? How long have you been down here? Is your name Rose? Dude, get me out of here, get me out of here. Get me out of here, get me out of here. Get me out of here, bro. My pants are falling down. Here, take this thing. What's the door? Whoa. What'd you see down there? Think about what we were seeing before? I was in there, I was crawling in there, and I was trying to get out, and I couldn't talk, and it was holding my feet, and I just want to get out here. You guys do the show. Just do the show. I'm done, I'm going home.
So I ran, and not thinking, I'm busting through people, there's crew there, I'm in tears, and I run out of the house, and I'm embarrassed. It's like falling down on the ice. It's like I was very embarrassed. I didn't know what to think because I was afraid. I shouldn't be afraid. And I could feel the thumb and the fingers. I could still feel that memory of that around my ankles. Okay, are ghosts that strong? Is there something that can actually grab my ankles and pull me? Regardless, it's still a mystery to me. One of the most terrifying things that have ever happened to me in my life. Apart from one of my children running out in the street one time, which scared me to death, this is the next one on the plate. It was absolutely frightening.
When I stopped working there and I was involved, I really missed it. It was sad. And it's been at least 5 or 6 years since I was involved with the house, and I still tell stories about it. I talk about it. I reminisce about it. I love that place. It was, again, one of the best times in my life.
Is the absence of the manor mean that its absence in our life? Absolutely. We are feeling it. It's right here, and it's sad. the beauty of the manor missing, maybe. I'd like to believe that the entities there that were so-called trapped or chose to be there, that may have suffered over years because they were in asylums or whatever the reason that they were stuck there, are free now. Of course, there's two sides to that story. A lot of people are like, no, you build a fast food restaurant there, it's going to be just as haunted as the Wolfe Manor. That remains to be seen. But I like to believe that those entities, those people that Todd, Terry, Brandon, George, the list is huge of the people that fell in love with the entities there. I choose to believe that maybe now they are free for heaven or wherever they go.
Okay, this is a secret that I've always known about, because if you go online and Google Sears Magnolia, you'll see the blueprints for the Wolfe Manor. So in the blueprints there was a dumbwaiter, which just goes up to the 4th floor, which was the ballroom, down to the basement. And in the blueprints it shows a clothes shaft to be able to drop your clothes. And if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be right here. So let's all find out. Wow. So that goes down. So how it worked was there was probably a door right here, and kids could, or whoever lived here, the Andrade family could put their clothes in, and it stopped where there's a piece of wood. I can tell that's the kitchen, but it used to go all the way down to the basement. So when we go down to the basement, let's try to find that opening as well. But yeah, I've always wanted to do that, so now we know there was a laundry chute and the dumbwaiter up here at the Wolfe Manor. That was fun. So now you can see Mary's room. You guys have been watching Mary's room for years, when Scott and I and Terry, all the TV shows, have spent a lot of time in the Wolfe Manor. So what you're about to see doesn't look anything like her old room. So come on in. So Mary's bed, we had it right there. We had the nightstands, the chairs, lamps, the cherub that was up here on the wall. Donna Raymond spent a lot of time in this room. She's the one who really helped us to learn about Mary. Yeah, she would come visit and just sit in a chair right here for hours. Just sit there, and I could hear her from the downstairs talking to Mary, and that was pretty amazing. So in Mary's room, they've taken out the ceiling because I guess the sheetrock had the asbestos in it, so that's all been cleaned out. The walls have been stripped from the sheetrock. Everything's nice and clean. It's kind of weird to think that it's all been cleaned just to get torn down. A lot of history in this room with all of our ghost hunting. It's kind of weird sitting here thinking about the flashbacks of all of us, all the tours that we did, the Halloween attraction. Again, Scott and Terry and I, we spent hours in this room sitting, listening, doing EVP sessions, having our flashlights turning off and on. Yeah. So where's Mary gonna go? I don't know. Just hope she's okay. Let's go to the master bedroom. The master bedroom definitely looks different as well. They tore out all the sheetrock in the ceiling. There's marks on the walls, I guess, from the asbestos people, meaning leave these walls alone, so they did that. At first I thought someone came in and did graffiti, but I guess it's just marking which rooms to leave alone. So yeah, if this room could talk, I'll tell you that. Knowing that this was the master bedroom out in the middle of the country, great vineyards all around the house. It must have been amazing. All the kids running through here, the Andrade family. I've had my memories in here since 1997, but you can imagine the family, the original family that built it, you know, their history, their family, their kids, grandkids, all running around this house having a blast. So it's a shame that it can just be discarded like it's gonna be. It's a waste. This is the master bedroom bathroom. This has never been seen before. This is, when I bought the house in '97, this had vinyl flooring. And we always knew there was beautiful tile underneath, so this mosaic tile is awesome. So, and the shower looks like that's where a bathtub used to be. So we're gonna take out these tiles. So before the house gets smashed, we're gonna try to take all these tiles out like we did in Mary's bathroom. So these will go up for sale as well. So we're gonna try to put all this kind of stuff in a plaque. And one of my fans in Hawaii, I delivered a plaque with a piece of tile and a beautiful piece of artwork hand-drawn from the Wolfe Manor. So we're going to put those together for you guys that want to have a piece of the Wolfe Manor. This room is really interesting. This is the room that we used to call the heart attack room. When Terry and I and Scott used to do tours, the common denominator with a lot of our guests were they felt a heaviness in this room. And then we'd all talk afterwards and they said, yeah, it's weird when we get in this room, we call it, well, first it was like the black room, but then we realized that a lot of people always talked about having a heavy chest, they didn't feel comfortable, so that's how it became the heart attack room. What else? This was the room that had all the railings up in the ceiling, where all the bed, you know, you could see where the beds were. There was 4 in this room, and there used to be lights on the walls. They used to be right here, and there was 4. Sometimes the globes would get knocked off in some of our shows. That was pretty crazy. I did a scene in here with Zach, Aaron, and Nick. They had a bed right there. If you go back and watch their TV show, there's a scene where somebody's laying in a gurney. It's kind of all blurry, but I have that. They put me in a hospital gown, and they put me in that bed, so they did that for some extra footage, but that was me in the bed, and afterwards Zach, Aaron, and Nick all signed that hospital gown. So that was kind of cool. I have that. So let's go into George's room. So George's room looks a little different too. Again, they took all the sheetrock off, so it's kind of weird for me to see it like this. You know, this is all new to me. So, you know, George harassed a lot of women from what I understand. Donna would always tell us stories about how he harasses women. He's a womanizer, and that's how this room became George's room. So if he's in here with us right now, there's 3 men, so he's not going to bother us, I guess. Let's go this way. Watch this step. I don't really remember ever having a name for this room. It's the opposite side of Mary's room. So Mary's room is on the other side, and then you go right in the middle, and that's where Mary's bathroom is. So we've caught some evidence in that room as well. That was kind of crazy. But this was always black. This whole room was painted black for the Halloween attraction. And I think it housed like 4 patients in here. But again, all the sheetrock's taken off, so it's kind of creepy, but it's really cool that all the windows are pretty much open, so it's light, because it's always been dark. Black. So, you know something else we could never figure out? Well, the color of the walls. I just realized this, if I'm looking up now, like they're painted blue. So back in the day, you guys have never seen that before, so it looks like a baby blue. I never thought about like what color did they paint the rooms in this house. but blue. Downstairs, I know there's some rooms that they have them painted brown, so that was kind of interesting. So this is a solarium in here. This is what we talk about, used to heat and cool the house down. You want to stay away from that, you'll fall right through. So this is a solarium. There's 13 windows all the way around us. This window right here is a famous window. I should probably take it out, this door. This is the, again, watching Ghost Adventures, where Zach in the very beginning talks about, this place is really haunted. He looks out and he goes, and we'll find out. Slams the window. So this is it right here. So it's kind of cool. But yeah, so this room's all ready as well. There was no sheetrock damage in here, so it looks like this room's ready for demolition. Just sad. Yeah.
It's the orb one here. Let's try this. It'd be nice if we could get it.
In doing the paranormal, there's people that come before us and there's people that come after us, but there's trailblazers. There's certain people who created this path that we follow. Don Staggs is one of them. This is the gentleman who actually spent nights and days, none of us did it, but actually spend days and nights in Wolfe Manor. Don Staggs has had more happen to him, I think, at Wolfe Manor than any of us. Terrifying? I don't know. Don is bulletproof in the spirit world and bulletproof in the paranormal. I'd like to thank Don Staggs for being that guy that opened the door for us. Because years before we did this, there was Don. There was Don doing his bit at the Wolfe Manor.
I think it was back in 2005. We went up there. I had joined a team called Orange County Ghost Hunters. And I was like their, what I called their paranormal bloodhound. When we went to a place, I would know where to set the cameras up, where to set the audio up. Basically, when I went into a place without having any knowledge of it, I knew what was going on and where it was going on at. So I pick up on things and know stuff like that. So we went up there and I'd heard about it. So before we went up there, we had one guy who would do research, and and that guy would research it and find out everything. And then we had another guy who was a remote viewer who could see from distances. I actually tried the first time I went up there to concentrate and remote view it and see if I could picture it in my mind. And I pictured Wolfe Manor, and I also pictured horses, and I pictured, like back early 1900s, first cars, and still some horses and stuff on the streets. And I pictured a drive up from behind where there was like a place to get out and go in from the back way. And at that time I had pictured not only that, but I also seen the later edition, I think it was probably in the late 60s or 70s, where they put the ward on the back. I pictured the ward, and then I pictured a building at the end of the ward, more offset, about 10 or 20 feet away from it. And when we first got there and we pulled into the lot, I seen the house, Wolfe Manor, and I go, this is just how I thought I seen it. And I go, with the ward on the back and everything. And then I looked in the back and I go, I was wrong. Because in my sight, I seen a building sitting there in the back. So we walked out and walked around Wolfe Manor. When we walked to the back, that's when I discovered the foundation where they had just recently tore a building down there. But there was a building there back when I was trying to get the vision of it, I guess, or I had picked it up from the past. But I picked up a building that they had torn down. So even today, if I think about Wolfe Manor, it's still there to me. When it comes to the number of spirits in the place, I tell people, I go, I'm not sure, because sometimes you pick up more than at other times, but there's always been, to me, at least 12 or 13. There may be more that are there, and maybe some are there all the time and some come and go. The bad guy, I think, is there all the time now. Since they tore the ward down, somehow all the spirits moved up to the house. I didn't know that he could do that, but he has. He's the one naming the ones that I've picked up on and that I've done EVPs with and tried to check on. He seemed to be in the basement stair area. When you would first go down into the basement, It seemed like he wanted to push people or shove them or trip them up. At the base of the stairs was a man that he would hold his head and walk back and forth, and just hold his head and walk back and forth. And then also in the basement was a woman spirit, a female spirit, and she was scared. She would hide, and she would go around and she would hide. I think she was more afraid of that later on, of that male spirit, that bad guy, but she would hide. Then there was also another spirit that I never had anything to do with, that was down in the basement over in there's a crawl space area. I think later on Scott made the mistake of going in there, but I'm not sure. I think Scott said something about going in there once. I wouldn't advise going into that area. It was a very private thing. It didn't want to be bothered, and I'm afraid that it probably would have attacked somebody if they went up in there. And later on, I think he did go up in there. Upstairs, predominantly, was George. Was kind of a quirky guy, a little, maybe we'll say not quite all sane, a little weird. Liked women. He liked women. He liked girl investigators. He liked women. Then there was, in Mary's room, there was Mary. And the only thing I ever got from Mary was around the bed area and around the window was her looking out the very front window. She would love to look out that window. And I really don't know any of the history about a Mary, or if there was a Mary or anything, but I got a Mary there, got the George. 12 or better spirits in the house. As soon as I walked into the house and Todd took the rest of the team into the living room by the stairs off to the right, as soon as he did that, I stopped when I came in the door. I picked up on a little girl that walked back and forth from the kitchen to the stairs, from the kitchen to the stairs. And I also picked up that she walked sometimes up to the stairs that went upstairs. And I was telling Todd that right away. I go, Todd, there's a little girl that walks around here. He goes, yeah. He goes, that's what I've been told. And she's one of the things that later that night, I forget what time it was that happened, that I was sitting at a couch on the inside wall of that living room that backed to the stairway. And as I was sitting there, I could just feel that she was on the stairs behind me. I felt a hand reach through the wall, and it goes on my shoulder. It went 3 taps like that. And right away I yelled for my team, everybody get up, we got to lock into time, we got to do this, we got to go take pictures. And you know, it's, for me, I knew personally what it was, but to get that evidence, you have to act quick and do your EVPs and do your pictures and do all that. Plus you have to log the time to check if there was an earthquake or anything at that time that might have caused a disturbance. Some of the evidence that I'll be giving you so that you can go through, one of them is a video. I set the camera up off to the right, so I would catch the airflow. And although there are orbs out there that can be explained because of dust, pollen, everything, bugs, there's tons of things. There's an airflow that came through the house, but you can see the flow from right to left. That's just the wind carrying dust through, and then the dust is reflecting off of my IR. There's one, came out of the chair. Let me take it back to that. See if we can get it. Why would it go to the chair and then come straight at the camera? There, it goes to the chair, comes back at the camera. I don't know about those. Some orbs are hard to explain. That kind of an orb right there I don't think is dust, and I can't explain that as anything except paranormal. It goes against all scientific evidence, you know, and it's not a bug, because if you've done this as long as I have, you know when you see a bug, they have a certain motion to them. They don't flow. They flutter, and they have a different effect. And anything that light would blow with the airflow, not stop in the middle, come up, look at the camera, go back, and then leave the way it came in. I think it was midnight, we heard this really large bang, and it sounded like a heavy bookcase had fell over in an empty room. That's how loud it was. Okay, this one will be quick.
You guys okay?
Not us.
Yeah, we went to investigate it. When we heard that bang, people don't understand, there's so many hours of recordings. Besides when I do a recording where I ask EVPs, I have a separate recording that runs 24 hours. So that if I'm doing EVPs and asking questions, and then I play it back, sometimes the spirits answer the second time, and I get that on the separate recorder. So always run a backup recorder, and you'll catch the. That's how this bang was running. A recorder was just laying out running. I think it's in the middle. Right there.
Okay.
That was a big bang. Myself and Jeff, that was with me on the team, went up and tried to recreate that bang. And I mean, we slammed things down, we stomped on the floor, we took boards and slammed them. We could not recreate how loud that bang was.
You guys okay?
It's not us.
Oh, well, one of the other things that happened was a few years later, I went back with Scott and Terry Campbell and Scott Grunewald, and we were in the basement, went down there to do some EVP work. Well, Scott had a program on, and like to have a good time. I like to have a good time. I thought it might be fun if I dressed up as a doctor, like back in the day at the sanitarium, when a doctor would care for a patient. They'd have a white coat on, and it would say Clovis Sanitarium. So I got a white doctor's coat, and I had a patch made up, and had it sewed. It said Clovis Sanitarium. And we went there and filmed a little bit. And when we went down in the basement to do EVPs, one of the things that came up was during the EVPs, one of the ones was when we were talking, before we asked the question, somebody had said something about a headache or something. So it's not in that, about that, but on the next one we're talking, asking questions, and something goes, aspirin.
We're recording, we're going to stay real still, get quiet so we can get you, okay?
So it asked for an aspirin. And then also one of the things that happened with the EVPs was I'm dressed up as a doctor, and I don't remember if it was Scott or Terry, but one of them had said, yeah, Don's a doctor, he's here to help, he can help you. And the EVP that we got was, he's no doctor. And it was like 4 elements. He's no doctor. Like that. So that's evidence that I have. I'll give you too, so you can have that.
So right now we're at the basement entrance from the first floor, ground floor. And something we didn't talk about in this other room, right here, is there was a passageway that we didn't know was here until they took the sheetrock down. This went straight into the family room. So this was probably an entrance for the help. So we believe the room right here was for staff. Then you have your basement, you have your access to the staircase that went up. So this whole corridor back here in this corner was probably for staff. You know, the maids and people like that took care of the family here, the Andrade family. So that would probably have like a swinging door on it, so they could go in and out from the kitchen, bringing items to the family. So let's go downstairs in the basement and we'll see what's going on down there. So the basement, they didn't really do a lot to. I believe a lot of it's already prepped, ready to go. We still have to get one more device out. That was something that they used to do the ironing with. So it's a roller in there, and the roller turns, and they would put the sheets or the, you know, whatever they needed to through that machine. So we're going to take that out as well. Go back here. This is a very, very famous part of the house. Again, I keep referring to Ghost Adventures with Zach, Aaron, and Nick. this couch right here is the couch that I believe the first time ever I've ever seen on TV where a ghost comes in and lays on the couch. So the ghost laid on this couch, and then it came in here and laid on the floor. So that couch is going to be taken out of here, and this will be auctioned off on eBay as well. But yeah, Zach, Aaron, and Nick were right over there in that corner, preparing, getting ready to start the filming with that ultraviolet camera that they borrowed. And they told me after the show was over that they weren't quite ready, and they were getting everything organized to start the filming of using that ultraviolet camera. But unbeknownst to them, they see that purple haze come right through that doorway. So it came through that doorway, came in, laid on that couch, stood back up and walked out. And then Zach, I believe, coerced it to come back in, and when it did, it came in and laid right in front of this couch. So it's a very famous couch, and we'll end up saying who gets it. So now let's go find this other hole. I'm not for sure where it's at, but I think it's right here. I don't know why I think it's here. We're gonna find out. Yep. Oh. This is a great find. This is the actual dumbwaiter itself. Oh my God. I have to get this out of here. It's gonna take more to get it. I can't get it out of here, but I've never seen one though, but I always wondered what took the food, and there's different shelves in there. Wow, this is so cool. So we're gonna get this out of here. I had no idea that was in there.
So I'm like a big kid. I wanted to get my sledgehammer, and I wanted to start smashing the walls, knowing it didn't matter at that point if I damaged the house because it was going to come down anyway. So I got the hammer and started revealing the, not secrets, but things that they had covered up for whatever reason. Maybe to make the house up to code for the hospital. I don't really know. But all I knew is that there was something behind these walls that I was dying to know, and this was my chance to beat the walls and find out what was hiding behind the sheetrock. I found the dumbwaiter that I never knew was in the wall. I knew the shaft was there, but I had no clue that the dumbwaiter itself, the wooden box that created food up and down, cocktails, you know, upstairs to the 4th floor ballroom. And so you can only imagine the food that would come upstairs and go up and down on this beautiful cabinet that we found. We found that in the basement. The dumbwaiter had fallen all the way down to the basement where it had been sitting and resting in the dark for God knows how many years. This is an old, very old kid's tricycle front wheel. This was a little bent, but the kids would ride on their tricycle. I had no clue, but we would find all these artifacts that were in the ground, buried, and these are just amazing. Also, there was a lot of medical equipment, medical bottles. We also found syringes, rusty farm implements, and actually, we found a bone. I've never shown this to anyone before. I don't know what the bone is from. I don't know if it's from an animal, a human. I have no clue. But this is something I've had for quite a long time with all the other artifacts that I've dug up at the Wolfe Manor that I haven't really shared with people until this moment. You know, knowing that there was such a draw to the house, I kept thinking, what can I do with it? What can I do with this beautiful mansion, 8,000 square feet, and the only thing I knew was that everybody wanted in there. So, you know, I talked about it with a lot of friends, and we came up with this idea, let's build a hotel. So I got architects together, contractors, and we started the process. 4-story hotel wing in the back. The mansion was going to be refurbished. And at that time, that's when, really the depression started hitting, and there was no money for lending. So we had a beautiful business plan, and we'd go from, bank to bank, and there was no monies available for non-flagship hotels. It wasn't a franchise hotel, it was the Wolfe Manor. Yes, it's on 5 television shows, and yes, people know me, but that's not a reason to get a huge loan. So I understood that. So we just kind of sat and waited to see what would happen. Time kind of ran out. We had break-ins, people wanted in, the house needed to be updated, and it needed to be updated back to basically commercial use. So we had to be ADA compliant and things like that. There was no funding for that. That was around $700,000. And so time ran out, and I just had to open myself up to say this wasn't meant to be, and now we need to move forward. And so it was time that the house had to come down. This beautiful historical home had a tractor outside, and it was going to start smashing it. And so I just laid in my bed, and I'm like trying to visualize that, like, really? And he said, Todd, he goes, everybody's down here, there's a big crowd of people. And I'm like, and he goes, are you going to come down? And I said, no, I can't come down. I'd been on the news every day for 2 weeks. It seemed like news people were here at my home where I live, and I just didn't want to go down there and see it. And so my son was upstairs, and I broke it to him, and I said, honey, I said, the house is coming down today. They're there right now. He got all upset, and I said, it's happening, and we were both upset. And emails started coming in, Facebook, it went viral. Everyone had their cameras out at the Wolfe Manor, and they were filming this big machine, taking big bites of the Wolfe Manor and crushing it and putting it in dumpsters. And I would look on the internet, and I would look on Facebook, and people were just, it was almost like a tornado went through our town, and everybody was posting what happened. And people would call and check on me and make sure I was okay, and I said, yeah, I'm fine. And all I could think of was supporters. People are down there watching. The students from Clovis East were upset. They were down there. Fans, neighbors, everyone. And I just felt like I was letting them down, like they needed me to come down there too. And I didn't want to, and then all of a sudden something came over me, and I said, Landon, I said, we need to go down there. And he said, Dad, I don't want to go down there. And I said, we need to go down there for everyone else. And so we got ready, and the news had even asked me if I was coming down, and I said, no, I'm sorry. I don't want to be interviewed. This is too hard, and they understood. So, like I said, I changed my mind, and I just remember driving down there. I just remember it was like the longest trip down to the Wolfe Manor. And I just knew as I got closer, I was driving down Clovis Avenue and I could see the house in the distance, and you know, and I thought, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. Turn around, Todd, go back home. You don't need to witness this. Just go home. And so I parked my car and I saw all the crowds of people in the front of the house. They were in the street. They had the streets blocked off. And I mean, there were so many people. And I parked my truck, and Landon and I walked hand in hand, and I remember turning the corner and I saw the big machine taking parts of the back of the house off, and I felt like the crowd all looked over at me like they couldn't believe I was there. And you know, a lot of people wanted to take photos of me and take photos with me, and then cameras were there and news, and before I knew it, I had a camera on me and microphones, and the news were trying to ask me questions about what was going on and how I felt. And when I first got on the property, I broke down immediately. That was hard, because the looks on everyone's faces was like I was at a funeral. And they just looked at me, and the sad looks on their faces, knowing how upset I was. So they would come up and hug me, and we'd cry, and you know, and then that moment was over. That first initial hard part was over. And I was happy that I went down there. I was happy that I went down there for the people that were there watching this. You know, they needed to see me. So it was good. We made the best of it.
The Wolfe Manor was definitely something part of my life, and it's still emotional to me today, that will hold near and dear to my heart. If they ever were to write a story about Scott Grunwald, it would be Scott Grunwald of Wolfe Manor. It was way too important part of my life, and it always will be.
So hearing about the demolition and knowing what Todd has had to go through with that makes me want to cry right now. It makes me super sad. I really wish that they could have moved forward and made it into the restaurant and hotel that he wanted to make it into. I think it would have been a great success. I feel sick to my stomach, and I feel shaky even thinking about it. It makes me so sad.
The personal experiences I've had and the experiences in my work as a demonologist that I've dealt with through that location, I will say it's caused a lot of problems with people that had attachments, that had spirits follow them home, and people that didn't know what to do with that. And so I got a lot of calls to try to help those individuals to release some of this stuff that was happening to them. And so for me, Wolfe Manor doesn't have a very nice place in my heart, but I can understand Todd's appreciation of the location, his connection to the location, and how it really did build to become a piece of his identity, and his presence in the paranormal community really came through that house. So for him, I can't imagine how difficult it is to transition from this time in his life where he's losing something that he loves so much, and now having to give that up and go on without it. It's very hard. And so I feel for him. I feel bad for him in that sense. But I know Todd's a very resilient guy, and I know that he will find something to help him get through this and to move forward. And I'm sure he won't be away from the paranormal community, because like the rest of us, Once you are in it and you taste it and you get a feeling for what it's like to be a paranormal investigator and to experience the other side, that's not something you let go of, and it does change you forever.
It was so hard to see him go through everything with the city. Yes, the house was really rough around the edges, and yes, it needed some money. I think, you know, everybody has some fault. It's not just the city, it's not just Todd. But there was just, I wish they could have come together in a better way. You know, what do you do? You know, you only have so much money to invest, and you try to make the city happy, and you try to make everybody happy, and again, like Tony, he worked so hard and he fought so hard, but he ended up having to let it go.
And I couldn't imagine what it'd be like owning a place like that and being a part of the history of that place like Todd Wolfe was. I think that the building kind of reached a pinnacle, if you will, and that the energy there that's been there for so long, so many years, it almost seems like, you know, from my personal opinion, that it was a kind of time for the place to go away, if you will. And hopefully during this process, during the building being knocked down, hopefully the spirits there gained some rest, and hopefully they were able to be released or be able to walk away freely from that place.
Making another hotel where people can come stay and investigate the spirits that are still here. I think it would work.
Just because the house is gone, are the spirits gone? You know, we don't necessarily know that. If another building is built on the same spot, is it going to be haunted? You know, are the spirits going to reside there as well? You know, Mary and George and, you know, a couple of spirits that we know of.
I'm sad that, you know, they had to turn out this way. I think the Wolfe Manor was a great, not only historical, but also just I mean, it holds a lot of sentiment in my heart just because this is how I got into the paranormal. I remember, you know, watching paranormal shows and really wanting to get into it, and the Wolfe Manor was the first place we actually had our first investigation as a team, and it just kind of changed our lives, and it's how our group was started because of the Wolfe Manor. And when I heard that, you know, Todd was trying to save it and the city was really pushing to demolition it, and I was really saddened by the city's decision to tear down such a historical piece of the city that really, I think, although it did cause a lot of nuisances for the city and you know, problems, I think if they were more willing to work with Todd, I think they could have found some sort of resolution that it could have kept the house as well as, you know, help with the city's problems as well. But yeah, it's definitely sad to you know, turn around and just see an empty lot now where, you know, the Wolfe Manor once stood.
I wish so bad that it could have been turned into the beautiful place Todd wanted it to be. He had such great vision on the place. The ideas were amazing. It would have been such a great place to go. It would have been a popular place to go. People would have come from all over to see it.
But I wasn't unhappy that the building was gone, because I felt like that was a negative place that just kept drawing people, you know what I mean? So I wasn't on the bandwagon of everybody going, oh, I'm, you know, so sorry. I mean, I did feel for Todd in that sense. I know he invested a lot of money into it and he had big plans for it. It wasn't just the spirits of the hospice patients, you know what I mean? I was kind of on that side of people that believed there was more to that place than just, oh, ghosts. There was something darker there. And I didn't ever know what to put my finger on it. I wasn't super unhappy with it going away.
With the end of this sort of dynasty of Wolfe Manor, I do feel like it's going to be a lot of closure for some folks that had some negative attachments to that place, and a little bit of closure for those of us that saw it as a potential hazard, both because of the physical space being almost in disrepair, well, actually completely in disrepair and now gone, or because of the paranormal factors that were happening. And you know, I'm sad to see it go, but at the same time, I'm glad. And I know, like I said before, I know that Todd will be able to move forward from this, and you know, he's not going to quit, neither are the rest of us. We're all in this for the long haul until it's our turn to be the ghost.
Thanks to Todd Wolfe for allowing me to look into my fascination with the paranormal, because really, if it wasn't for the Wolfe Manor, you know, I wouldn't have been able to, you know, fully explore the paranormal, because I was fascinated with the ghost hunter shows and And I never thought I'd be able to actually investigate the Wolfe Manor like I ended up being able to do, and it really validated that there is paranormal activity and that there were multiple spirits there, and I'll definitely never forget my experiences there.
I went on to Google once to research stuff, and there's a blueprint of the Wolfe Manor, and I think that the Wolfe Manor should be rebuilt and be used as maybe a museum or something, because the fact of it being gone is really sad.
Don't sell it to any developer that will just wreck this place, because who needs a haunted Starbucks? Who needs a haunted McDonald's or a haunted nail salon? Or just leave it like it is and let people come in and walk around with their recorders. I think that would be cool.
I had dreams of filming, welcoming people to this beautiful hotel. So now I'm filming this goodbye. And all the people that supported me, family and friends. And it was just like, this isn't happening. I'm really not saying this last goodbye. I'm really not walking through these doors for the last time. And it's like all the memories and excitement with Scott and Terry and everybody. And I was saying goodbye. And it just didn't seem real, you know. The house made me famous. The house made a lot of people famous. A lot of people love that place. And it was time to say goodbye. It was one of the most difficult things I've done. So it wasn't a good day. So basically we went around the entire Wolfe Manor. You get to see what the house looks like now. I'm learning a lot still about the house. We all got to witness it together. The dumbwaiter shaft, the dumbwaiter down at the basement, which I had no clue it was down there. We found the clothes shaft, so the people upstairs could put their clothes down, the laundry chute. So I'm really excited about today's finds. So anyway, I appreciate you guys, all your support. Over all these years, you guys have no idea the emails and the text messages that I received. And every day, emails begging and pleading, trying to get this house to be able to be saved, and there's just nothing we can do to save it. It's very sad. I probably can't be here when it's being torn down. So I think the biggest thing is I want you guys all to know is the appreciation from my family to yours, all your support, your kind letters, your kind support letters, your emails, your text messages. I get them daily and they're overwhelming, and it's amazing. So I think we've all enjoyed the Wolfe Manor. And this is our goodbye. So again, I'm Todd Wolfe. And I thank you.